yes as well. All right, welcome everybody uh, to supply chain Excel for supply chain professionals, supply chain teams. Excited to cover conditional formatting today, and this is super applicable for not just supply chain. It can cover a lot of different people. The data we have is continues to be our transactions data that we've covered the last few sessions. If you look in the chat, it's at the very, very top. Click download file. If you've been here before or used my been to a class before, I use this file a lot, but the different tabs are sometimes different. I try and customize it for a specific function that we're going to do. So for today, we got conditional formatting. I have this already pre-built spend by supplier kind of report right here. And so download that from the chat, and that should get you going. The other tab you'll see is spend supplier and month, where we have one supplier and we have years and months, and we're going to cover this as well. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about conditional formatting, and we're going to show a few examples. And the big thing here is, sorry, I'm pulling out my notes, is that this allows you to create Excel workbooks that are helpful and not just I'm gonna unmute. I gotta unmute my my chat real quick. This allows you to change values and change the aesthetic. So for my opinion, when you're thinking about like weekly reports and kind of like consistent reporting and whatever, aesthetics are important. I don't think it's the most important thing, but it becomes important because when you look at this, you say, okay, this doesn't make any sense to me. It's like there's too much here. And like this, it's like, yeah, okay, this is nice, but is this good, bad, ugly? Like I don't know, right? So this isn't particularly helpful by itself, and that's why we want to put some conditional formatting here, right? So first thing you're going to do is on your supplier here, this is one of my favorite things. You're going to go to the Spend by Supplier tab. You're going to click column A, and you're going to click this conditional formatting here. Okay. Now, before we click any of these specific things, just get familiar with some of the menu options. So you can highlight cells that are greater than, less than, between, equal, text, dates, duplicates. You can do top 10%, top 10 total. You can do these kind of bars. You can do color scales. You can do icons or custom rules. Okay, so we're going to do highlight cells rules, and we're going to click duplicate values. Now this is one of my favorite things to do because this little window will pop up and it says format only unique or duplicate values. Format with this red. With dark red, you could change it to yellow or green if you want. The red, in my opinion, is the easiest for duplicates. It's, like that. It's an error. And you click OK. Now, you'll notice two of these highlighted as pink. You say, oh, we got two duplicates, right? So, if you were to have a report and you're like, hey, what's the total sum of like this column? It's $53 million, right? It's like, okay, great. But now we have two duplicates, right? So something must be wrong, okay? Now, I created those duplicates for the sake of this presentation. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see that I created these two lines there, okay? So you have Granger and Miller uniforms there, and clearly these are an error, so you can delete them out. Before we do that, we're going to add a filter to this. So in your top menu, there should be something called Sort and Filter. You'll click that and click Filter. You can also on your keyboard do Control-Shift-L is the Control plus Shift plus L. That's the shortcut to add and remove these filters really quickly. So if you wanted to highlight cells, duplicate values, you can come to this filter here and you can apply a color and say, I want the cell color of rows, and it only filters to the duplicates. So that's a really cool feature in my opinion. I like it. Add and remove filters, didn't know that. Love it, perfect. Yeah, so there you go. So you can filter by a color, right? You can do cell color or font color. You can also do cell icon, which is a different type of formatting. But there you go. Pretty cool. So for today's purposes, we're just going to delete these. We're going to delete the row, and you'll notice that the first two are no longer highlighted. Now, if you're not sure if the if that format is still available, you can click Conditional Formatting. You can click Manage Rules, and you can see that column A still has a duplicate values assigned for it. So now you rest assured that there is a rule for it, and I can't filter by cell color, which means I can't. There's nothing I can do. Right? There are no duplicates, rather. Right? Which is great. We don't want duplicates here. So there you go. So that's one of my favorite uses of conditional formatting is duplicate values. The next one, which is probably the most common, is to do these data bars or color scales. Okay, so you're just going to click all of column B, and you're going to click we're going to do data bars first, and you're going to choose any one of these that you want. It's your preference. Different color or solid versus gradient bars, right? I did solid green. You can do whatever you'd like, okay? So if you scroll down, now you can see all these different things. Now you can see this group has the highest bar, and cancel. And this $32 as well as this $98.70, I don't even see a bar, right? It's like it's so small that it's not even registering as a possibility, right? So it's like, okay, so this is most likely, I should say, the highest one there, and Texas Electric Cooperatives is very high also. And you can just scroll down and you'll keep seeing all these different high values, and there you go. So that's good. The other thing you can do is if you click all of column B, instead of data bars, we're going to do color scales. And again, you can choose any one here. I recommend one of these top two, just because it's green, yellow, red, and it's a little bit easier to see. Now you'll notice when you do green, yellow, red, the previous conditional formatting is still there. So this green bar is one rule, and the little green background in the behind it is another rule, right? Now this is a lot more helpful a lot of times, because remember that $32 that we saw right here? Depending on your use case, you may want to show that as red rather than just white, right? Rather than blank, right? It doesn't have a bar. You want it to show that it's an error or an issue. It's like low values versus not, right? So you can use this to cover the anomalies, or you can use it to cover cover everything, right? So there you go. So if you click on column B again and you click Conditional Formatting, Manage Rules, right, you see that we have two different rules applied here, okay? Now, we want to get rid of that. I'm on a Mac, and so I don't think it's exactly the same, but you're going to click the data bar, and you're going to click the minus button, could be delete rule or something along those lines, and you're just going to click that and then click OK. And you'll notice that those green bars are now gone, and you still have the green, yellow, red. You notice red is the lowest value, right? That's $32, and big bright green is this highest value. Was that 71 million? No, 7 million. Yeah, so that's pretty good. It's pretty helpful. The other thing you can do on this is, let's say there's a specific threshold that you want to cover. So we're going to do Manage Rules, and we're going to edit this rule. Okay, so I don't necessarily want, like, I want green, yellow, red, right? Like, that's correct. But I don't want the lowest value 50% and the highest value, okay? I want a number. If I'm over $100,000, I want green, right? And I actually don't want green, I want blue, okay? And then let's do another number, and let's do 50,000, right? And that's yellow, that's fine. And then another number, we're going to do 10,000, right? So these are just arbitrary. You can do whatever you want, but instead of lowest, mid, point, and highest, we're going to do specific numbers that we target. And what you can do is you can actually reference specific cells. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. But click OK and click OK again, and you'll see all of our formatting changed, right? It's like, oh, this is a lot different, right? And that's okay. You can see everything under $10,000 is now highlighted red. And we basically have three colors here because we have a lot of stuff over 100,000. That's this dark blue. We have some that's kind of in the middle. That's this orange or this kind of weird gray looking thing. But we mostly have a lot of blues, some yellows, and then mostly reds, all the way down. So that is kind of a good start of conditional formatting. And yeah, I'm gonna stop here for now and ask if there's any questions. I apologize, the power is out in my office, so I gotta open up that kind of infinity screen for a second. But any questions before we move on? While I'm talking, as people are typing in questions or raising their hands, you can also do two color scales. So if you wanted a minimum and a max, you could do that, and you click OK, right? It's like that is also an option. Then you have a lot of purples here, right? So there's three colors, two colors, or icons. There we go. Got a raised hand. Perfect. Jacob B. Jake. Oh, you're on mute, Jake.
Thanks, I do that all the time. With color scales, I've often wondered this. Is there any way you can do a scale across multiple cells? Like, can you weight those ranges across a couple values? Or does it only really ever make sense to do it in the column?
Uh, do you mean like if I have two columns here, spend one, spend two?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, it could say, well, between any of these, yeah.
So this random between number here, I'll just go like that. So if we change this conditional formatting, now what you'll notice here is I clicked manage rules and I don't have anything here. And that's because it shows the formatting rules for the current selection only. So we're going to change that to this worksheet, and you'll see that that shows up again. So instead of applies to BB, I'm going to change that to applies to BC, right? And then I'm going to click OK. So now it's looking for, and if let's do one more thing. I'm gonna change this. In fact, I'm gonna delete this. I'm gonna restart. If I do go all there, color scales, green, yellow, red, right? This is kind of what you would expect. Now, if I put in a very, very large number here, right? That's gonna be green, and now everything else will be red. And that like 700,000 number we had earlier is just barely a little bit green. Like you can barely see it.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
slight tint. But yeah, so if there were two columns that you were working through, you could certainly do this, right? And yeah, and it's certainly possible. Yeah.
Right, where you have like class A and class B, and then you have the student population, right, or grades across. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. The other thing you can do in regards to that is you could highlight one column, and let's say you want two different value ranges, right? You can create a new rule here. The other thing you can do is if you click all of column B and click this little paint tool,
Yeah.
this is a copy formatting. You click the paint rule and then click all of column C, and it actually creates a brand new range. And so, like, 1,099, it's like this 87,000 is green, this 96,000 is green on this column, even though 137,000 on this column is yellow, right?
Yeah.
So it's two separate conditional formatting things, and it's a really easy thing to just copy the formatting over to another column. So,
Sure, yeah, you could have two different conditional formatting,
yeah,
but just comparing both rows, right, where the greens and that,
yeah,
I don't know, weight based on the highs and lows in each.
yep.
Okay, cool. That makes sense.
Any other questions before we move on? Appreciate it, Jake. All right. We're going to go to spend, supplier, and month tab. And this is very similar to what you were describing, okay? So if we go to this tab and we click 1 through 12, 2009 to 2022, right? So you click this entire area, ignore the total for now. You can do that same thing, and this is kind of what you were talking about, where you do a color scale, and boom, it's the entire population of this grid, more or less, right? So this is kind of exactly what you're saying as well, where you have multiple columns, multiple ranges. And you'll see if you manage rules, there's kind of two things involved here, right? It's like what's the rule, right? But then also where does it apply, right? And both of those are super important as well. But let's say here, right? And I liked your like student grades, for example, right? So we're gonna just clear all the rules from this. So we're gonna do icons instead, right? And let's just pretend that this is like a good flag or bad, right? And so in this case, this 27,000 got a green flag. Basically nothing else did, right? Everything else is red. We're going to change that, and we're going to manage rules, and we're going to change the rule for this, and it's going to be when value is, I don't care about the percent, I want to do a number. So if it was like in the school example, it'd be like, hey, if we got an A, right? I want a 90 if it's an A, right? The other thing you can do is you can change the icon here if you're interested. I'm going to keep with the green check mark. But let's just say it's 10,000, right? And I want a number if it's less than 10,000 and greater than 1,000, and then red if less than 1,000. I think that should be it. Click OK. There we go. Okay. So now we have one green, and actually only one green across this whole thing. But we do have a bunch of yellows now as well. You have these yellow icons. So this is good. This is like a nice rules-based flag system. So let's just say like high range, mid range, and low range, right? So instead of fixing those, we're going to go back into our manage rules. So click in. The easiest way to do this is click inside your conditional formatting. You're going to go click here and manage rules again, right? And you're going to edit this, but instead of designating a specific number, you're going to click this little chart here on the right hand side. Now this is saying select a cell. We're going to do select a cell here, okay? And then you're going to click enter. And then this number, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to replace that with that, right? And enter, okay? And actually, we don't need a low range. But if you look, because those are blank now, everything is green. So now I can do 10,000 here, right? And I can do 1,000 here, and now we got all the reds, right? But let's say, hey, I actually want to do 5,000, right? Are there any above 5,000? No. Let's do 1,000 and then 100. So it looks like we've got a bunch of 1,000s here, right? And a bunch of thousands here, which again isn't super relevant for spend, but could be in a lot of applications. I'm thinking quality would be a good place for this. But you can do the same thing, right? And you can just kind of create some gibberish here if you want. You can do all sorts of numbers, right? The other thing you can do, and this is just the way this is set up, if you could change the supplier, so you can go ahead, I don't want to do Granger, I want to do this KBS electrical distributors. You can copy that and just paste values there, right? So now this is an entirely new report, which is pretty cool. We're not going to cover this formula, but it's cool. So yeah, this is good, and you can change your high range, mid range, and this could be particularly helpful for a specific supplier right? Like if you're creating a dashboard and you're like, hey, I want this to look a certain way for a kind of a standard report, right? I had a situation when I was at Tesla where I had a report that was kind of like today, last week, last week, 2 weeks ago, right? 3 weeks ago, and we'd have metric 1, metric 2, metric 3, right? Something like that. And so we would do this where we would populate these values and we would create just some basic formatting on it, right? And that was a great way to kind of structure it. So this is conditional formatting across a wide range. Hello, sorry, got lost there, but I think I'm back. Thank you, good. All right, so this is the icons set. Now what we're going to do real quick is we're going to manage rules. We're going to just change the icons because we're having fun with it. And we're going to do, I'm going to do that because I think it's funny, and we're going to do that. And there we go. And we can change the icons, click that, and there you go. Now, again, if it was like a 75%, we could do like 0.75, right, to try and fill up that large thing. And then this is 0.5, right? And, we could do something like that, right? So there you go. All right, I'm going to clear this. I'm going to clear from this entire sheet. Any questions for now? Let me jump into this real quick. Stop share for a second. Any questions? Hopefully not going too fast, but some good stuff here. Okay, no questions. I want to move on. All right, a couple other things we're going to do. We're going to look at the top 10, bottom 10, and then we're going to do where we create custom formulas for formatting purposes. So up till now, we've done kind of pre-built formulas. Hey, I want, a certain percentage or, if, greater than or equal to or whatever, right? So now we're going to cover top 10%. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to highlight all of these cells again, right? And we're going to do conditional formatting. We're going to do top bottom rules, okay? Now if you notice, I did include the totals, and that's for demonstration purposes. So if you conditional format and you top 10 bottom rules, and we do top 10 items, right? I want the top 10 filled with green, right? And it's an easy toggle, right? And you can change from 10 to 5, right? That doesn't matter. But we're going to do top 10%. I'm going to click OK, right? Now, if you notice, all your totals got highlighted, and these did not. So that's potentially problematic. Now I'm going to go back to Granger because they have more values here. I think this is a better way to show it. So if you include your totals, this is not a very particularly helpful view. So you can clear your rules and create it again, or you can manage and just change your applies to and change from N to M and click OK. And there you go. Now you have more cells in here that are highlighted, and you can see, oh yeah, 2018 we had a bunch of spend, right? That was probably our biggest year, right? And it clearly was, but you say, hey, where's the 46,000 coming from? Well, a lot of months were big. March was obviously the biggest, but there were a few other big months as well, right? In 2018. So this is the top 10, and you can do the same thing. You can hover over all this, and we're going to do the bottom 10, right? Bottom 10 items, and we're going to make those red. And if you see, it just got all the zeros, right? Now, if I change that from bottom 10 to bottom 20%, let's see if that changes anything. No, it doesn't. I just don't know how many boxes there are. Let me delete these 2 rows. If I delete these 2 rows, because there's no spend there, still doesn't do it, but I want to see, I'm just going to type 1s. Yeah, if you type a 1 in here, right, which is not the right formula, you still get that bottom 20%. It's still highlighted red. So there you go. So that's top 10%, bottom 10%. Again, you can edit the rule. The one thing you can't do here is you can't make this a variable like we did with our high range, mid range. So you do have to kind of specify it right in your formatting. Okay, good stuff. I'm going to clear this out. Any questions before we move on? What we're going to do next is this 46,000 row, right? This is our largest year. I'm gonna highlight this entire row based off of the fact that it was our highest year, and I'm very excited to show this one because this is the next level of complexity for conditional formatting, and we're probably going to end on this one. I like it. It's something that's not intuitive, but you're creating your own formulas. Okay, so let's highlight all of these just to show you what it is like to create a brand new rule from scratch. Right? That's not what I want. I want highlight cells. I want new rule, but I want classic. No. Data bar. No. Where is it? Shoot. More rules. Oh my gosh. Where? I apologize. Manage rules. I feel like in a Windows computer it's easier. For a Mac, manage rules and then click this plus button. And it's still not there. Did I? Oh, here we go. So from this screen, you're going to do style classic, and then instead of format only top rank, use a formula to determine which cells to format. I don't understand why that is a thing. Okay, so yeah, this is a very odd view for me. But so your view in a Windows PC is going to probably look a little bit different. But you should see something that says use a formula to determine which cells to format. So do that, and then you're going to want to click a formula bar here. Okay, so hopefully that's not too confusing, and it's easy enough. So we highlight all these cells, right? So I want to know equals B7 greater than 0. Okay, and this is just to highlight what a formula looks like, right? In your conditional formatting. Okay, so equals B7 greater than 0, and you click OK, right? And it applies to B7 through M18. You're going to click OK, right? Perfect. So this is great. This is exactly what we want to see. So if you manage rules again, and it's like perfect, all the ones greater than 0 are highlighted. I want to manage it again. I want to edit this, but instead of B7, I'm going to do B8. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. Now, what's going to happen here is something's going to be wrong. If you notice, everything has shifted, right? Everywhere where you see a 0, the cell above it is now blank, because now B7 is looking to see if cell B8 is greater than 0, right? And that's where the tricky part is when you're managing rules and this applies to. You need to make sure that your applies to and your formula match. And this is where it's particularly, this is where it matters more, I suppose. So we do B8. So I'm going to change this to C7. If we do C7, Same thing. Click OK, click OK. You'll notice everywhere where there's a 0, the cell to the left of it is blank, right? Again, not particularly helpful, but if you're doing this, there you go. So we're going to use something we've talked about in other lessons. You can use these dollar signs to like fix, so to speak, the reference, right? So I'm just going to do C. I'm going to change this back to B. B7 greater than 0, okay? So I'm going to click OK, and you're going to keep this applies to the same, but B7, you're going to put a dollar sign before the B and after the B. So dollar sign before the B, dollar sign before the 7, okay? So B7 greater than 0. Now what it's going to do is it's going to look at all of these cells, and if B7 is greater than 0, then all of these cells are going to be pink. So I'm going to click OK, and everything goes away. It's like, okay, well, that is correct, because for all of these cells, if B7 was blank, I don't highlight. And there you go, it's not highlighted. Now, if I get rid of if I change my formula and I want, I'm gonna get rid of the dollar sign before the 7. So I'm gonna keep a dollar sign at the B, before the B, and then no dollar sign before the 7. Click OK. Click OK again. Boom. So now, every single row here is highlighted because B7, B8, B9, B10, B11, B12 are all highlighted as well. So I really love that formula as well. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to highlight the largest the largest row, right? So for this supplier, 2018, we want to highlight all of 2018, this entire row, because it's the largest, right? So we're going to change this, and we're going to do manage rules again, and we're going to edit our rule, okay? So this formula, I'm just going to sit on it for a while as you guys are working through it. I want to know if N7 is greater than 0, okay? So I'm going to click OK for now. I'm going to click OK again, right? That's great. All of column N is greater than 0, so everything's highlighted, right? I'm going to edit that again. That was just demonstration, I apologize. Edit this again. So instead of N7, which is this cell here, greater than 0, I want to N7 is equal to the max of N7 to N18. Okay, so I want whichever total is the maximum in this range, I want to highlight that row. And before we go too far, I'm going to put a dollar sign. Whoops, I apologize. Equal to max N7 N18, close parentheses. I got to put a dollar sign before the N, dollar sign before the 7, dollar sign before the N, dollar sign before the 18. Okay, so what this should do, and fingers crossed it just works on our first shot, whichever row has the highest number, that entire row will be highlighted. I'm going to click OK, click OK, sweet. So because 46,000 was the highest number on this list, right, all of 2018 was highlighted, okay? Now, if you, so I'm going to stop there. I'm going to go back to manage rules, and I'm going to look at this, and I'm just going to sit here for a while to make sure you guys can see this formula. But I'll stop talking for a minute to make sure you guys have this. Any questions on this? It's a really awesome formula. I love this formula a lot. It's super helpful. I'm going to stop sharing and start answering a couple questions. Jake.
Okay, I'm just curious, why why in that formula do you reference the top one again, right? Like the top cell in that range? Like you say, it's equal to N7, and then it's equal to the rest of that, right?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's it's because of this applies to. Okay, so let me demonstrate this real
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
So if I manage rules, right, I edit this rule. I don't know why it keeps getting larger. I edit this rule. Okay, now let's do cancel. Let's see. Trying to think of a good way to demonstrate that. We talked about that a little bit. If you hover here and you do highlight cells, right, more, and you use a formula, right, equals C7 B7 greater than 0, right? That was one that we did before,
Yeah.
right? If I changed the apply to here from B7 to A7, all of a sudden now A7 will it's like it moves over. It's always the top left.
Got you. Okay, so from the top of this row down. Okay.
Correct. And so yeah, so if
Or
I
column in this case. Yeah.
yeah, like this is always the top leftmost reference. Like when it's looking at this applies to, it starts with A7 and it goes down to the right, right?
And that's just how they've set it up in Excel.
Correct. Yeah.
Just how they've set. Okay.
So
Okay,
if I change this to B8 again, right? You click OK. The cell above, right? So let me show that again. So in this, what we see here right now is equals B8 greater than 0, but it applies to B7. So B7 is the first cell, and it looks to see if B8 is greater than 0.
Mm-hmm.
And then it looks at B11 and it says, is B12 greater than 0? Because the formatting only applies to these cells, but the formula is the entire workbook, right? So that's why row 11 is still highlighted, because the row below it is. Yeah, if I do like row 12 here, click OK, right? You can see row 12 all got highlighted besides this one because row 13 was 0, right? So, and that's just, yeah, that's an Excel. That's just how Excel sets it up. It's the top left cell.
So. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Other questions. This is like, if you can do this, this is like advanced Excel. Like, this is great. Like, you've now leveled up in your Excel skills if you can do this type of thing. But yeah, any questions about what we've covered so far? Okay, I'm probably gonna wrap it up there. But this was great, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you guys have, or call it a day. Yeah, so here, I'm gonna stop recording.